Not if you want to come back a virgin, he snarled. That's our love interest? A sexist? The worst timing in a romance novel to have a spicy scene. Oh, books are all just romance and smut now because of TikTok. Oh, because of TikTok, books are just tropes nowadays. It's all enemies to lovers and fake dating. But is that so? Is it really that new? Have there never before been romance novels of dubious quality that are basically just tropes? So today I am so excited to dive into the world of harlequin romance novels. You know, the books your mom has read. Those little mass market paperbacks that you can buy at the supermarkets. They all have a cover that is a painting of a man and a woman in a very passionate position, but still fully clothed. Were they the booktok books of the 20th century? I lit some candles for you guys because we're talking about romance today. By the way, my name's Leonie. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hello! Look, I have read my fair share of booktok romance novels. Good ones and really bad ones. And I am just like excited to kind of compare it to the romance novels of like the 90s. And before I start actually reading one of these books, let's just take a little look at what is out there. And I've noticed that there are a few common themes, just like you have nowadays. You know, almost every romance novel nowadays is either like romantasy is super popular, like having a fantasy element. It's almost always enemies to lovers, hate to lovers, fake dating, small town romances. Those are very common themes. And I do think the common themes say something about the time that these books were published, or the fantasies that people have in that time, the things that people long for. And there have clearly been some changes. One of the very common themes that I saw that I personally don't really encounter nowadays anymore are like kids and parenting. There's a lot of dad romance. Bonus points if it's a playboy that turns out to be a really great natural father. There's a big focus on marrying as well. A simple Texas wedding, runaway wedding, birthday bride, bride by Friday. Okay, I need a little bit of a break from all the craziness. My favorite way to relax is getting creative. And the sponsor of today's video is great for that, Craftsy. Craftsy is your online resource for all things creative. They have thousands of classes on things like crocheting, knitting, painting, cake decorating, even woodworking. AKA the perfect activities for when you're listening to an audiobook. I really enjoyed their class Art Journaling with Watercolor by Judith Kessel-Mamey. I've been art journaling for years and I still got so many fun ideas to use watercolor in ways that I never thought of before. Like using the paper towel that you use to blot the paint in a collage in your art journal. And I know that so many of you guys have been wanting to get into crocheting or learning how to draw, and Craftsy is the perfect place to learn that. Now the first 1,000 of you that click the link in my description will get a full year of Craftsy for only $1.49. It's valid for new members only, so click the link in my description or scan the QR code on the screen to get that discount on Craftsy. Okay, I think I've calmed down enough to continue. There were many that had something to do with Texas or cowboys. And I do remember that last year cowboy romances became super popular again on booktok as well, but it has been a tried and true romance subgenre for a very long time. There's also a little bit more kind of problematic themes here, like being in the desert and romancing shanks are a very big trope. Let me just read you how they describe the plot for Amber and the Sheik. They call him a desert lover. She certainly didn't believe that the desert sheiks still made a habit of kidnapping beautiful women and riding off into the sunset. That's kind of perpetuating a stereotype there. She describes the sheik as follows. He exuded danger and excitement, beautiful, exotic, but they are not the only people that get fetishized for where they come from. Italian invader, Spanish Nights, Outback Temptation. I am happy that we don't do this anymore. I found more tropes that were popular back in the day that we still see all the time, like forced proximity. Here we have The Perfect Meal by Rosemary Hammond, about two people that get stranded in a storm together. Tale as old as time, it seems. There is so much fake dating, specifically marriage of convenience, A Convenient Bride, Bride for Hire, Temporary Girlfriend. Also, so many boss romances. There's a whole history before we got to books like The Fine Print nowadays. Bargaining with the Boss, Beauty and the Boss, Falling for the Boss. You know, the titles make it pretty clear what they're about. And in the end, I found one book that I was excited about reading for myself just to see what it is like. It is called A Business Engagement, because this is pure enemies to lovers, which is my favorite genre, my favorite trope. It is an office romance about a man and a woman that are on the board together and they hate each other. Will this be the hating game of 1997? It's written by Jessica Steele, who is an iconic romance writer. She wrote more than 88 romance novels in her lifetime, which is insane. And by the way, how I found these books is I looked at the Harlequin treasury line. Harlequin has a treasury line of 90s romances that you can still get the ebook for. This could either be very similar to like regular romances nowadays, just maybe with some outdated traditions in there, or it could be maybe this is all a lot worse than I thought it would be. I just want to know if the haters are right, you know? Is BookTok reading uniquely bad romance novels? Or has it just been there all this time? Let's find out. Alright, I have my alcohol-free gin tonic ready. I'm like halfway into this book. Oh, that's nice. Our main character, Ashlyn, gets a spot on the board of this big old company where she's gonna be the only woman surrounded by men. But yeah, the start of the story is basically that she's a nepo baby that gets put on this like executive board, and she keeps telling us, I don't know anything about the business world. I don't know what's going on. I don't know anything about that. How could I be on these boards? Like, it's clearly presented as like a problem of that we are supposed to like empathize with. But like, oh my god, how is she gonna do that? She knows nothing about business. How is she gonna be on the board? And all the while I'm just thinking, you're a nepo baby, you should not be on that board. You know, I've absolutely no knowledge of business. I know nothing about boardroom procedures. And then the father is like, you don't need to. All you have to do is turn up to the monthly meeting and look intelligent. And of course, the moment we've all been waiting for, the chairman of this executive board meeting is Carter Hamilton. Good looking, very tall, a most eligible bachelor. You know, the descriptions and introductions of these kinds of love interests clearly have never changed, because it's immediately like, wow, dark haired, dark gaze, tall. But I don't think that nowadays we call them eligible bachelors anymore. So Ashley goes to her first board meeting. She doesn't know how to dress, because how did board members dress? Well, not with a thick mane of red hair hanging all the way down their backs. That was for sure. She's a redhead, and that's like a thing. She comes to the board meeting, realizes that she is the only woman there, or in her own words, the only female present. Oh grief, had she invaded an all-male board? We also get it in the description of Carter Hamilton, who is so good looking. His voice was cultured and all-male. Ashlyn found herself pinned by a pair of dark, stern eyes. Oh, big business was the lifeblood to these people, and she was having a hard time making sense of any of it. Oh, she's just so stupid. That's the vibe I'm getting here. Oh, she'd never felt so inadequate. Everybody knew so much more than she did. It's kind of perpetuating this idea that like the reason that there were no women on the board is because now we finally have a woman and she doesn't know what she's doing. Kind of of sad. And very importantly, she hates Carter Hamilton. And immediately they just hate each other and they have this hateful back and forth for absolutely no reason. Like, I do not understand why they hate each other. She's constantly like, oh, he's such a swine, such a pig, how dare he say that? What will you have to drink, Ashlyn? Carter asked. Poison, she knew, would be his choice. Like, girl, why are you being so hateful? And then he says to her, I knew it was a mistake to have a female cluttering up the board. That's our love interest? A sexist? Okay, 90s man. I do love the insults that Ashlyn makes to Carter in her mind. Like, you don't really get main characters calling their hated enemy loathsome brute anymore. Or miserable toad. Rat, double-dyed rats. Also, another thing that happens is what you see super often still in romance novels is a main character being like, oh, you know, I've dated men, but it was never anything. I never really felt anything for any man ever. She says, oh, she could have dated more, she supposed. Perhaps the fact that she had 6 male cousins, was comfortable in male company, had made her dates more friend material than boyfriend material. Aw, she's not like other girls. She likes to hang out with the boys. And their whole thing is that he hates her because he thinks that she's flirting with everyone. Like, you know, she's a woman on the board and she's just flirting with all the married men there, which... okay, 90s man. But then on the meeting, he finds out that she speaks like so many different languages, because she like speaks like 10 languages and is super easy with all these other executive board members who are all men. So he asked her if she can be his PR assistant. And he just gives her a job. And so now they have lunch meetings together. And Ashlyn guessed this was the first time he'd had a business lunch invitation from a female of the species. Ugh. And we still continue on with the thing where she's constantly like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I actually should not be here. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so stupid. Ashlyn, because she's now a PR director, has to talk to all these executive men, and Carter still thinks that they're all flirting with her. He asked for a date, didn't he? Well, what if he did? I assume he knows that we do business from the boardroom, not the bedroom. For your information, Carter, I don't. Not on the first date, nor on the 10th. And then we get this revelation where he's like, good God, you're a virgin! Why is this relevant? And that's where I finished reading. I have no idea where this romance is gonna go. I'm gonna keep reading and I'll keep you posted on whatever weird things these two are gonna say. Crazy book. The meeting was deadly dull. Even the main character thinks that this is all boring. So Ashlyn and Carter kind of keep fighting over the fact she's supposedly flirting with all these people that she goes out on PR lunches with. He gets described like this. He was tall and seemed to dominate her office, and she wasn't going to be dominated by him or anyone else. Even back then, they were all tall and dominating. Carter scrutinized her, his glance traveling from her smooth, unlined forehead. What a weird detail. Her unlined forehead. Down over her dainty nose, to play around her mouth, her chin, and long, slender throat. And then, after taking in her coil of superb red hair, on the way back, his eyes met her green eyes. She's so dainty and red-haired and pretty and cute. And he's tall and dominant. Nothing has changed since then. So that evening he's entertaining like a couple that he does business with, and he wants her to be there because she's so great with the people, you know? So she meets him at dinner and he's looking fantastic. She had known he was good looking, but in a dinner jacket he was sensational. I don't know, I just kind of like that detail because it feels very, very 90s. Like, oh, look at him in his dinner jacket. Whereas nowadays it's like, he was wearing armor. He was wearing the scars of his enemies. He looks so hot in it. And here it's like, oh, his dinner jacket. Oh my god, and then she does a great job. And he's like, I've noticed, Ashlyn, that you have an intelligence and an inbuilt sensitivity that makes you a natural and sincere hostess. To which she responds with, me? Me? And then Carter, as if suddenly fascinated by her dainty nose, quite unexpectedly stretched out a hand and ran a finger down it. I'm cringing. And then when she goes home, he gives her a kiss on the cheek. Ashlyn drove an automatic pilot for half an hour, barely aware of anything but the tingling sensation of Carter's lips on her cheek. Ooh, I feel like I'm watching like a K-drama where like the biggest thing that's happening is like they're gonna hold hands at some point. And then when she gets home, she calls him to tell him that she got home safe, and they wish each other good night. And honestly, when I was reading this, I was like, wait, I really enjoy the lack of texting. Because this was written in the 90s. If you wanted to communicate with each other, you had to give each other a call. And there's like another whole conversation going when you give each other a quick call to give each other an update on where you're at or what you're doing. Anyway, she gets another invite from another one of Carter's business partners for like a meeting together. Vezio invited me to dine with him tonight. Should I go, do you think? To which he answers, not if you want to come back a virgin, he snarled. Why this crazy focus on her virginity? And then later, Carter invites her to go on a business trip to France, to Paris. She is going to be in Paris. It is Ashlyn in Paris. She was going to France with Carter. Suddenly, Ashlyn felt tremendously alive, as if anything mattered. She was in love with him. Loved him, loved him, loved him, and she was going to France with him. Like, not even a few pages ago, she was calling him an annoying swine. She was hating on how awful he was, and now she loves him? All because he's taking you to France. I see where your heart lies. She had been in love with him and hadn't known it. I don't know anything about this man. Who is he? The man named Carter. What does he eat for breakfast? I have no idea. So then when a little while later they're bickering again over the phone, he puts down the phone and she's like, spleenish toad, she thought crossly. But because she loved him, she was able to laugh. Ha ha ha. Then of course she gets to him in France and they have like an apartment. He has like a business apartment and she's like, I'm to sleep here? It's not quite a there's only one bed trope, but it is a oh, we have to sleep in the same apartment kind of trope. One step back in the evolution, you know, the next step in evolution is there's gonna be one room maybe, and then there's gonna be only one bed. And you know, in like 5 or 10 years, there's gonna be like maybe only one pillow. Only one haystack in the barn. He takes her case and she's like, she watched as he picked up her case and noted to which room he took it, as well as noticing his chivalry. Woo! It feels very, very classic, very traditional. He also gives her a bunch of money so she can buy stuff in France, and she's like, no, I don't want your money. Why would I want that? But obviously it's amazing. And he's like, no, you deserve it for doing what you do so brilliantly. He smiled and dropped a gossamer light kiss upon her cheek. A gossamer light kiss upon her cheek. Wow, that's quite different than the modern. He crashed his lips into her. Then she wears like a really beautiful black dress, and Carter, who by the way at this point is still just her boss, his eyes are going over her from the tip of her head, skimming her shape and on down to her toes. Did anyone ever tell you that you've got the most sensational legs? Ugh. HR. And then she's like, she loved him. Oh, she loved him. And then right after that he says to her, come on, woman. He said, I'm starving and the concierge has a taxi waiting. If a man said to me, come on, woman, it would be over immediately. Then she kisses his cheek. Oh, scandal. I'm sorry, her color flared. I shouldn't have done. Oh, but I'm glad you did, he smiled, and purely to make her feel better about what she had done, he bent down and lightly placed his mouth over her own. It was sheer and perfect heaven to be in his arms. The pressure against her increased. She was learning, being teased, her mouth tormented. Now suddenly there's torture going on. She felt an insane desire to be closer to him. It had never happened before. Why is it always this? I don't like this trope of like a main character, a female main character who has somehow never experienced desire in her entire life ever, is also like, you know, a virgin. But now with this man, it's the first time in her life she's ever felt anything. It gives this idea of like the ideal romance means that you've only ever had feelings for this one man that you're also going to marry, and you've never had thoughts about anyone else. So they have a passionate kiss, but she breaks it off and she says a line that I honestly love. She says, "I'm not sure that I want to do more than paddle in the shadows." I think that's a gorgeous way of saying that you don't want to go home with him and like continue with this, but you just want to kiss. Anyway, he's totally okay with it. The next day she uses the money that he has given her to buy like a new suit because, you know, women be shopping. And then she goes on this other business trip. It's a French dude. She also goes on like a business lunch with him, and just like every other dude that she's been on business lunches with, he is hitting on her. But it gets pretty bad. Like, he is basically harassing her. It's really gnarly, like just kind of out of nowhere. It gets pretty dark. She's yelling no. She describes it as being like a complete and utter nightmare. She's trying to like push him away from her, but he like keeps getting to her. She describes this as fighting and kicking like fury whenever she was able. She is crying. She feels terrible. She gets in a taxi to go home, which she's still in France, so that means going back to Carter in his apartment. We're gonna have like a classic, oh, the good guy that like saves our female main character from like an evil, harassing man. And when she arrives at the apartment, she's described as both the straps of her dress were broken and hanging down, and her arms were red and starting to bruise. And then of course, "What in God's name has happened to you?" Carter thundered. His fury was back with a vengeance. I was reading this in a cafe. Imagine me just sitting there in complete shock of what I just read, what I just had under my nose. Oh, Carter, you wouldn't? Wow, the bar is very high. The bar is set so high. You're such a great gentleman for not doing that. And honestly, if you think about it on a more meta level, I just think it's a really sad that there needed to be, you know, like romance novels with like dreamy fantasies of woman, and said dreamy fantasy for woman is just a man that says that he wouldn't be doing that. Very normal, very regular romance. Anyway, Ashlyn has clearly just gone through something slightly traumatic, but he's being really nice to her. It's like hurt comfort, you know, the trope hurt comfort, except the hurt is like a pretty serious thing. He set her down. He tenderly sponged her face and oh so considerately dried it. "I can't stop shaking," she told him. "I know, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Come on," he coaxed with a smile. "You need some rest, some sleep." Basically just him like taking care of her in this situation. And her saying, "Oh, she loved him. She loved him. She loved him." Again, I ask, why? Who is he? "Carter, Carter," she said urgently. "Would you kiss me?" Crazy moment to ask that. Your wish is my command, he said lightly. Pucker up. I'm not kidding, he actually says pucker up. If that happened to me, I would immediately retract my kiss invitation. Like my lips would curl inwards if someone said that to me. And this, I kid you not, leads to a spicy scene. You thought what could be like the worst moment, the worst timing in a romance novel to have a spicy scene? It's happening right now. Like the same evening she just had an awful experience, they're gonna do the thing right now. It really feels like the whole harassment situation that she went through was just there to like build tension for the real romance, to make like do like a sad thing for her so he can comfort her instead of taking it kind of seriously. But yeah, they're going down. They're getting down to business, you know, to defeat the Huns. At this moment of reading, I was just really curious to see how far they would go with this. Ashlyn says, I've never thought too much about kissing, but I really like kissing you. It's giving 11-year-old. I've never thought of kissing. I don't know how to do that. Ooh. Oh, she says, could I have another, please? It's giving little girl. He laughed and she loved him. They kissed again and again. Ashlyn had no idea how long they lay together with just a sheet and a blanket separating them. Ashlyn suddenly started to feel the need for something more. Something more? Well, you harlot. Scandalous. And then we get, honestly, a kind of cute, spicy scene. It doesn't go all the way, but it, you know, she ends up completely naked. There's some fondling involved. Also, at some point, her breast is described as the globe of her nakedness, which I thought was like the most wonderful innuendo. Need to find the right bra for my globes of nakedness. He asks her, am I going too fast for you? She asks him, oh, is it alright if I do that? It's kind of cute. But then, while they're in the thick of it, in a moment of mysterious modesty, she instinctively went backwards instead of forwards. Oh, Carter, she cried. Forgive me, I didn't mean to. I just have so much to learn still. And then suddenly he goes still, not moving. What's wrong? She asked. And then he like pulls himself free and he's like, it's over, forget it. And then he just leaves. And she's like, what the hell just happened? Did I do something wrong? He just goes away. He just leaves. He just leaves her there in this very vulnerable moment, might I add. So we're all just like, what is going on? Where did Carter go? Why did he suddenly break it off? Did he change his mind? She's confused, embarrassed. She hates him, but also loves him, of course. She goes home from France, and then the day before like her normal job life as his like PR director thing would start again, she gets a letter from him. A handwritten letter. They don't do it like that anymore. Again, no texting. And this is what is in the letter. It's a letter from Carter. And he says that there's a meeting the next morning that she needs to be at, because the purpose of this meeting is to have you removed from the board for bringing the good name of the company into ill repute. He says that she did not behave correctly around one of their French collaborators, so like the dude that just harassed her. And he says, I shall also have to reveal how I personally experienced a certain forwardness in your behavior. He is now accusing her of workplace harassment after she went to him for solace for being harassed at work by one of the business partners. He's now accusing her of that thing, which is that is thriller material. It's thriller material. She is livid, of course, goes to the meeting super angry, rightfully so, and then he reveals the following. He says, I needed to see you, but when you refused to speak to me over the phone, I realized I was going to have to take some drastic action. He just did it to get into contact with her. Over the years, there have been many romance stories where men take drastic actions to get the attention of their love interest. You know, standing outside their window with a boom box, writing love letters, putting an airplane in the sky with like a message behind it. But this guy threatens to fire her and accuse her of workplace harassment. Now that's a way to get attention from your lover, of course. They don't do it like that anymore. Insane behavior. And then he reveals why he suddenly went away that evening. He says, I drove away from your home, furious. And then apparently he went to this French dude, Mathieu, to get angry at him. And he punched him in the face. I took pleasure in harming him myself. Weird. I left you that night, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I just had to leave because my manly testosterone fueled me to hit the man that harmed you. She calls him a lying toad. Love that for her. And then she's like, no, I don't believe you. I'm gonna leave. He stops her, doesn't let her leave. He caught hold of her upper arms. Take your hands off me, she ordered. I will if you stay. Oh. This girl just had a whole experience with another person at her work being forceful towards her and not letting her go away. And now our love interest is doing it and it's fine somehow. And we're not seeing that it's basically the same thing, that there are some parallels here. And then he explains that, you know, he all did it because he loves her so much. And he's been in love with her this whole time or something. Ugh, whatever. I just couldn't think straight while I was in the same apartment with you. But then you were beautiful, quite a stunning female. I'm longing to tell you how much I like you, Ashlyn. And your emotional color tells me you're not totally immune to me, my dear. I'm sorry, this book just like randomly comes out with the most banger lines. Imagine you're making someone blush and you say, your emotional color tells me you're not immune to me. Oh, Jessica Steele! And then, I actually kind of like this part. He asks her, when did you know that you loved me? To which she answers, oh, I knew that when... Oh! Ha! So you do love me! He cried exultantly. He really tricked her there. Darling, darling Ashlyn. Oh, wonderful, wonderful darling. I love the way these people speak. I do so love you. Let me hear you say how you feel. And then she says, oh, I love you, I do. And then Carter kissed her. And then it's just pages and pages of them like kissing and telling each other that they love each other so much. You were the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Oh, Carter, she whispered. They kissed. It seemed like the most natural thing to do. And they kissed and kissed again and hold on to each other. And they're like giving each other compliments. Saying, oh Carter, oh Ashlyn, a bazillion gajillion times. It goes on so long. It goes on so long. They're just constantly telling each other, oh, I was actually in love with you all this time. And then it ends. This book ends with this. So just kind of recapping, okay, what's been going on here. They've been working together for, I think, what, a few months maybe? They hated each other for the longest time. Then got into a huge fight because he left her while they were getting intimate. He punched the guy that harassed her, then blackmailed her in order to get to her. Then they confessed for the first time that they are into each other. Like 5 minutes ago, maybe 10 minutes ago, they confessed for the first time that they are actually into each other and that they actually like each other. And then this happens. There isn't a board meeting this morning, is there? No, my love. And not tomorrow either, or the day after that. Why? Why won't there be a board meeting? Because, my darling, we'll be away on our honeymoon. Honeymoon? She gasped. Do you agree to marry me? Oh, I'm sure the board can manage without us for a week or two, she accepted. And that's where it ends. It just ends with them getting married. I don't know, maybe this is like a business contract thing, because I know these kinds of books tend to come with like contracts for what has to be in them sometimes. So it just feels like Jessica Steele was like, oh, and also I wrote in the contract that they need to get married at the end, so I'll just like quickly add this on at the end. They're getting married. They're going on a honeymoon. Makes no sense. Of course, I've only read one of these books right now, but if this is like a regular occurrence, I think it says a lot about how people thought about romance back then, that like the ultimate thing you could do was get married. You don't really see that all the time anymore in romance novels. It is often there in like an epilogue and rarely in the story itself. Interesting. That was an interesting book. Definitely did not have fun at all with any of that. I think the biggest crime of this book was that it was just like so boring. So excruciatingly boring. But it's funny to see like certain little descriptions, certain little tropes being pretty similar to the way, you know, bad romance novels still are to this day. Like, it's not that TikTok ruined it all. It was never really that great in the first place. And we've made steps, you know? We've made steps in the right direction, I think. I might need to read more of these Harlequin romances to get like an actual feel for the vibe at the time and like common tropes at the time. Let me know if you would like to see that and which ones you would then like me to read. Or if you have read a bunch of these books, I would love to know your perspective, and if this is in any way a good example of like the average 90s Harlequin romance, because of course I just read one. Maybe this one is like a big exception. I don't know. With that, I'm going to end this video. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you soon in another video very soon. Goodbye!